I will just try to share certain stray thought on the COVID situation in India and the topics related to it. If we recall it, you are all senior persons, you are all senior decision makers. You have seen the working of the government from a closer angle than what I have seen, and you know much more how these type of pandemics are handled both technically, bureaucratically, and politically. So, having that type of excellence available among the audience, I will not go into and dabble into that type of areas which are very well known to you, but still I would like to share with you that where are we today after passage of about 17, 16, 17 months. We are today in a situation when we have got a real fear in the mind of most of the populations who are living in at least about 13 or 14 states in the country. And that fear is only on account of one thing. What should we do so that we do not get infected? And if at all we get infected, will I get all the diagnostic and treatment facility at appropriate time so that I can safeguard my life? And if I get all these things, will I be able to become normal after the COVID or not? Now, these are the things which are hitting the mind of every populations, not only in Delhi but in major cities, major states where COVID second wave is hitting hard. Now, we know that the numbers we expected during the first wave, they gradually dwindled down, and it is from 7th April till date. It is about 6 weeks when we have seen the second wave with a velocity which was not predicted in the past. Its doubling rate, its tripling rate was much more faster. What we in medical terms call a R naught value, it was much more faster. It was not predicted. Second wave, everybody predicted that second wave will be there, and second wave has been seen in the past also. But the velocity with which this particular second wave was hitting the persons, the transmission rate, the infectivity rate, they were not predicted in the past. The second thing is that the fatality which it is causing, the number of deaths which are happening on account of this second wave, maybe on account of the high virulence of the mutated virus, or maybe on account of certain type of failure of the overall healthcare system. But that type of fatality was also not predicted, and that is a very serious matter. The third thing was that probably we have done a lot during the first wave. We have succeeded to a large extent, and the public as well as the medical system as well as the administrative system and political system was able to do some things which was praiseworthy globally. But at the end of the day, somewhere something, some type of fatigue or some type of complacency just entered into the system, starting from the common man up to the political system. And this has impacted our preparedness, our response preparedness for the second wave. I will give you one example. Uh, in the morning, I was addressing a webinar on evidence-based medical practice, which is organized by Kalam Institute of Health Technology. The issue was data, whether we are having a right use of the data or not. Ultimately, what it came down, that scattered data available here and there, they are not being put up to the right use because we are not synthesizing them. We are not converting them into predictive modeling and other things. COVID first wave created a huge amount of data, not only in India but globally. There were good practices which has been identified, listed, published. There are good number of predictive modeling which has been done at every place, and somehow we have not been able to keep ourselves prepared up to that extent. So one thing I will keep, that a complacency, lack of documentations, lack of shaping the data which is available to us into evidences to make it into a standard practice. When by chance the second wave hits, we could have kept our public health system a really responsive, intact public health system. And when I say public health system, I don't mean it is government public health system. I mean it is a private as well as a government public health system, which under such type of situations, when the system is anticipated to overwhelm, we could have converged them to utilize it in the best possible way. And that might have resulted into a better type of scenario where fear has not resulted into panic, resulted into hoarding, resulted into black marketing, which has happened this time. So this is one thing which is observed during this second wave as well. The next thing which I would like to talk about is the vaccinations. We have got two sheet anchor for managing such type of massive velocities COVID wave. First is vaccinations. Second is detect and treat. So detect and treat system, I have given little bit idea to you about it. But if we talk about vaccination as well, now vaccination started somewhere around 15th of January. We have covered about 18 crore population with first dose or both the doses. Probably the number of the persons who have received two doses is around 2 crores. And if you try to calculate the time, it is approximately 4 months, 4 or 5 months. Now with this pace, if we try to foresee a vaccination program progressing and trying to cover at least about 80%, 70% of population, which is necessary to create a herd immunity and which has been time tested in the past as well, that if you want to use the vaccine for protection against a disease, we should have at least about 70-80% of the vaccine coverage in the shortest possible time. It is a matter of years. And that window of opportunity we don't have. Because second wave may ultimately follow into a third wave, which has been seen in other countries. If you don't respond well, it may follow into the fourth wave. We never know. And with each increasing transmission, if our R naught keeping pace is increasing and we are transmitting infection to more and more persons, the virus get more and more opportunity to get mutated. Today we have got double mutant. Now we have got a Andhra Pradesh virus, may have a triple mutant, may have a mega mutant. We don't know. We are learning. The science is evolving. Science is facing a virus which they have not seen in the past. They are trying to learn. Whatever learning we are having in this way, we are trying to put up certain things very clear. The one thing which is clear is that if we are able to vaccinate the 70-80% population within a year, we are better protected. We can achieve a herd immunity when this disease will become a commonplace disease and can be addressed by a common health post. But if we are not going to address a vaccination campaign in a speed and velocity which can immunize at least about 70-80% of populations in the shortest possible time, and as a public health expert, I will keep it by the end of the December or say the March, then we are going to face a probably more complicated type of pictures in the months to come. And my observation is basically based on the pattern which has emerged out from the first wave and the second wave. If you look at the first wave, it was elderly population. If you look at the second wave, it is young generation. Now the third generation, which is the third group, which is left unprotected, is the children. So there is a strong possibility and there is a strong available evidences abroad that children are getting affected where there are multiple waves one after another, and children will not behave like an adult. To anticipate a child to follow a COVID appropriate behavior is really very, very difficult. We don't have evidences even today for recruiting them into the vaccination program. So my issue, which I want to put before you, is overwhelming of the system is one thing. The pace of the vaccination with which it is going on is putting us at a danger spot. I have heard that the government is trying to rope in the 3 PSU, and these PSU have been given a technology transfer from the 2 manufacturers, Indian manufacturers, and they have promised certain type of vaccine productions within a period of 1 month. I have tried to put up everything together. What has been promised by the existing Indian manufacturers? What has been, what is the possibility which has come out by transferring the technology to the 3 PSUs and by including the imported vaccine Sputnik as well? I have put it up roundabout. If we try to do it, we will require at least about 60 crore doses. And 60 crore doses, if we try to utilize without wastage by December, then we have to have a monthly vaccination of about 10 crore population. While at present, our monthly vaccination is less than 5 crores. So the picture, overall picture which is emerging out is not looking very robust. So system, public health system failing, vaccine manufacturing is not reaching to that level in spite of the intervention at the highest level. I am little bit apprehensive about our handling capacity in the coming time for this type of virus. In spite of the efforts at the highest level in the country. I don't say that we don't have different type of problem. We have definitely different type of problem. And our problem is populations, the big size of the country, and the weak public health systems, the dichotomy between private and public providers, and the health-seeking behavior of the public. If you look at one time, large number of persons were saying that, look, we don't want to get vaccinated. Now, all those persons who were saying that we don't want to get vaccinated are going for the vaccination. So what I'm saying that with all these type of diversity, it is not a very confidence-giving situations which I foresee in the future. So this is the situation which I foresee, which gives me a reason to be little bit restless about handling this COVID in the country. So recently we have seen that at one time there was a black marketing of the remdesivir. Now there is a amphotericin B, because there was there was lot report about the black fungus. So amphotericin B has also gone out of the market. I keep on receiving everyday phone calls about all these things. This truck is not available. This oxygen cylinder, this oxygen is not available. Concentrator is not available. Bed is not available. And all these things are not giving me enough confidence to have a sound sleep, which I used to have before the second wave. Now, having said that, there will be some time an end to this thing. I anticipate the end to the COVID situation may come, not before. It passes through a cycle of 2 years from the onset. So the remaining period has to be made as good and as health supporting as possible. I do not know whether we are going to change our lifestyle. I do not know whether we are going to use all those safety measures which otherwise were our routine practices in the olden days. I do not know whether we are going to work at the governmental level to do away with all those useless system of fixed timing of office, schools, marketplaces. I do not know what is going to happen, but I am sure that some change will happen after this COVID is over. And this change, if it happens in a miserable amount of about 30 to 40% of our lifestyle, will give us a better quality of life, provided we are ready and consolidated and we are working with solidarity towards making this particular crisis time as a time in which we fight it out together solidly to protect not only ourselves, not only our family members, but our neighbors also, but everybody and anybody who approach to you for any type of help. So this is what I foresee as type of life after the post-COVID period. And second thing, I am very sure that the public health system is going to dramatically change after post-COVID period. There will be so much of technology inclusion within the public health system that the future primary health care system or future district health system or future tertiary health system will use these technologies like telemedicine and other things as a routine, and it will be accepted by the end user. So I foresee a major change in the public health system. I foresee some type of change in the lifestyle depending how much good sense prevail on our mind. And thirdly, I see that government will definitely pay more attention and more investment to the public health system. With 1.4% of the GDP being invested in the public health system in India, if we expect a result equivalent to the countries which are investing 10% plus of the GDP, then it is not right. That is all I wanted to share about the COVID today. I hope the information which I have tried to summarize to you may be of some value to you or some use to you. But that is what I could have done in the short period which has been given to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Shanti, can I raise
Yes,
it's a beautiful presentation, great presentation by Dr. Srivastava, and all thanks to him. But can I speak if you permit me then? Shanti ji?
Yes. Yes, I think we have the question and answer session now. You could.
Dr. Srivastava,
Yes, sir.
uh, I'm thinking of, you see, my all compliments in spite of whatever shortages, whatever trouble, and whatever happened, knowing things at the ground level. I personally feel that my compliments to the medical fraternity, doctors, nurses, and all those who are associated with it for the great work they had done in spite of all handicaps and sometimes mishandling by our political bosses or the administrators. The medical fraternity stood by the whole thing and did lot of good things. But now it is under strain. What I am saying is that there is a possibility. I mean, I was hearing these discussions on TV. I'm not a technical man. I'm a policeman. I'm not a technical man. So they have predicted that there will be other virus like something like other epidemics may come, and this may come in next few years or in 1 or 2 years, or even this is repeated. The third wave comes. So should not we have, knowing with our experience, considering the resources of our country, should not we make a contingency plan at national level where there is which should be where all these people should participate, state government, etc. Because it's a national problem. So whether it is a state subject or a central subject, we should all there should be a contingency plan which should be handled by the technical people, and political will is needed only to take that great policy decision what is to be and give direction or arrange finances. But there should be some contingency plan to meet such thing. We should not be taken by surprise. You have rightly suggested a lot of things in your presentation. But I personally feel there has to be some contingency plan. We make contingency plan for a lot of other natural calamities, this, that, etc. But now it is accepted that this third wave will come, some other virus may come. Medical fraternity तो हमारी यही है, तो हमें कोई contingency plan बनाना चाहिए. एक तो इसके ऊपर आप कुछ अगर कहना चाहें, if my question is deserves answer.
I will try to respond to your question. You know, it is a standard practice when you are facing pandemic and the gap between the two pandemic is reducing. At national level, there is a necessity to prepare a preparedness program, what you are referring as a contingency plan. Now, when there was a H1N1 epidemic, a preparedness program was prepared, which was dovetailed with the preparedness program recommended by the World Health Organizations, and in which infrastructure capacity building, training, a surveillance system, and a horizon screening for the new type of virus which are roaming here and there in the environment to find opportunity to attack the public health. So these are the components of that particular program. I was there in the government up to 2012, and it was prepared during my time. Now, if slowness of action at the level of investing into a thing which may have a future implication is something which is a common happening in the government system. But yes, I 100% agree with you. If you ask about the information, we know how many viruses are roaming here and there around the world, around the Indian continent, which can attack public health and create havoc. We have got these viruses already tested, genotyped in the National Institute of Virology. So all these things are available over there, maybe something less, something more, but a preparedness plan duly approved by the cabinet with the investment and institutional arrangement of creating that response should be available. That I 100% agree with. But sorry, it is not there. It has to be done as a type of knee-jerk reactions when the COVID hit us.
Raksa, one more very
Shan-
small point. The Daily Telegraph
Shanti ji,
had
whenever you permit me, I will have a question. Whenever you
just,
permit
just,
me.
no, just a small question. Daily Telegraph newspaper of Calcutta had organized some sort of seminar which came out in papers also, and very famous doctor of Calcutta, Dr. Kunal Sarkar, spoke during that thing, and he said that there is an institute of epidemiology in Pune which had great experts who have international recognition, some of them. He was citing, I think, about 10, 15 of them have international recognition. None of them were consulted in this, and the task was entrusted to ICMR, which is a research body. I'm not a technical man, so I cannot comment. I'm just conveying what was said in that conference, and where Dr. Kunal Sarkar is probably आप लोग जानते होंगे मैं तो नहीं जानता but in that it was he was made much about him that he's a great doctor, so he made this remark observation whether this is correct and to what extent कि एपिडेमोलॉजी इंस्टीट्यूट जो हमारा है पुणे का उसको इसमें शामिल ही नहीं करा गया.
You are right. You are right. But I can share with you, these are the administrative decisions which are taken up at the government level, whether they want to entrust the responsibility to ICMR or to the DGHS. I remember when there was H1N1 and tsunami, at that time this responsibility was entrusted to the DGHS. It was a matter of chance I was there as a DGHS. But this time they decided to give it to the ICMR. I am not in the government, I don't know what are the reasons, but the fact of the matter is that the ICMR is a research body. ICMR is not a public health service body. So they have got their inherent capacity to research and give a new vaccine or give a new drug, but they don't have expertise for handling these type of pandemics.
That Institute of Epidemiology has some experts who are internationally known, I think. This is what Dr. Kunal Sarkar said.
They have got a BSL-4 lab, and they have been able to produce good amount of internationally known products which are finding place in the market.
But Dr. Srivastava, it has not been come out except in this conference, which I by chance heard it. Somebody had given me a link, so I just heard it. Otherwise, it has not come out in papers also that this institute was not consulted. I am surprised.
May I ask my question now?
Thank you. Suresh, you can ask.
Yes, Suresh.
May I just one point, one small point. What is your take on 2DG? Do you think that it is a curative intervention?
You know, if you look at the theory,
Dr. Srivastava, I have a related question on the same 2DG. So please let me put it that through so that you complete your answer. There was somebody who told me that so far the trials on this 2DG have been all in vitro. There have been no in vivo trials so far. And therefore, in the case of the human trials, it is still not certain how the drug is going to behave. I have another question, but I think because this was linked to what Dr. Amrish asked, so I thought I will just chip in here. Thank you very much.
I think let me, what is 2G? 2G is a drug which is using a glucose, and that glucose is a type of pseudo-glucose, and that is the glucose within the cell which is consumed by the virus to create its photocopies, and that is how the virus multiply and build up its force and try to kill the cell. Okay. Now, theoretically, I am again saying, theoretically, this is a good concept. That if you replace it and it goes to the cell, and in the cell, it cheats the virus, and virus try to utilize it, and that glucose is not providing enough energy to replicate, and the virus will die its own death. So theoretically, this concept is good. 2G theoretically as a type of concept is should be a good medicine. The second thing is the prototype which they have created. They have done it in the lab in DRDO, and they have found that it is doing so. Then the third thing is that whether this thing actually works on a limited selected population. What we call is technology readiness level 4, 5, 6. Yes, they have done it in a limited number of the patients, limited number of the human beings, recruits we call, where it has seen that it is doing it. Now thereafter comes that the technology has to pass through a clinical trial. Now clinical trial phase 1, phase 2, phase 1 has been done. Phase 2 has been done where it is safety primarily. In public health, there is a emergency use clearance which has been given to this medicine. And emergency use clearance means that the drug is safe, but we have yet not tested its efficacy in doing the things which we have tested in the lab. So what you were asking as a question, particular question, that it has not been tested on the human being, it means that the CT3, clinical trial 3, has not been done. They have quoted a very small number of the patients where clinical trial 3 has been done. And in all probability, if I am right, the decision was that they have to do I think 10,000 doses has been given, which are given to some institutions, already identified institutions. They are service cum research institutions. They will use it on the patient so that they are able to add on the data already available there and try to showcase that in the real world, in the real COVID situation, this drug is effective. Now, if this drug is effective, it is a sachet form of drug. It is not injectable. It has to be taken up orally. Now, this drug is not having those type of ingredient which can cause a serious side effect. And it is an Indian product. It is an Indian product. And if it works, because theoretical model is right, lab model is right, a small recruit who have volunteered for such type of test within a given situation, within a controlled environment, is also giving results. The efficacy has not been tested, but safety has been tested in the field trial. Suppose it comes out as a good drug. Suppose it will take about 30 days to complete this particular work. And if it comes out as a good drug, now you look at the patient who is test positive, and his viral load is, say, for example, it is less viral load or it is high viral load. If you try to give this drug and stop replication of the virus, so the viral load will gradually come down because the virus keep on dying, and the fatality which it will cause by infecting the lung, causing vasculitis over there, will also be minimized. Suppose it is a low viral load patient. In low viral load patients, it will try to reduce the further multiplication, thus making the person normal in a faster time, so the hospital stay will be reduced. So what business was being claimed by the remdesivir and the other imported anti-flu, antiviral drugs, that business will be taken up by the 6G. Now, this is where the pharma industry, this is where the political decisions, this is where the regulators, this is where fudging of the data, all these comes into the picture. As a vigilant, concerned citizens of your repute and your status, if you are watchful about these things, and if by chance the things come out to be as good as they are being claimed, then it is not only a good solution, it is a very, very good type of new drug discovery for this type of disease. And it has got humongous implications both technically as well as economically.
Much, Dr. Srivastav. Sorry, but just one more very small question. I would also like to have your comments on our vaccine program at the moment. And my sense is that if we want to develop a sufficiently effective vaccine program, our 18 to 45 population should be vaccinated, if at least by the end of August or September. I mean, at the moment, our target is not even the end of the year, for which we require a huge production capacity to really require about 700 million doses. So given those kind of things, in fact, there is a Carnegie report which came out only yesterday on the vaccine program in India. How optimistic are you that we would be able to get the vaccine for the age group up till 45, even by the end of the year? Thank you, sir.
I will keep my fingers crossed, because what I have calculated, now at present the vaccine manufacturers have promised round about 5 crore doses by the end of June. Okay. If we take it as a monthly production, then these 5 crore doses in the remaining 6 months will turn out to be about 30 crore doses. And there are 3 manufacturing companies, Hafkin, Pepkal, and IL Hyderabad. They have been given some type of grant, and they have promised to produce round about 4 crore doses per month. And this multiplied to 6 is going to be 24 crores more. So altogether, if we try to calculate the availability, it is reaching to around about 60 crores. Now with 60 crores, my worry is not that suppose everything goes all right, they keep on producing like this, and they give us 60 crores. With 60 crores, we will be able to vaccinate 18 plus populations by the end of December. But issue is not the dose supply side. It's still, the issue is utilization side. We are so apprehensive in giving vaccination, permission for vaccination to the pre-existing centers. In Delhi, I give you an example. When this program for 18 plus vaccination started, the permission was not given to the CGHS centers where vaccination was going on. At the end of the day, before this, 45 CGHS dispensaries were vaccinating 45-year plus persons. I was not able to understand what was there. The reason which was quoted was that there is a less supply. Fair enough. When the supply increased, at that time, it should have been permitted. So my issue is that we have supply side fully efficient. And if we have got supply side fully efficient, are we having enough vaccination centers to vaccinate them? And what is a big deal in vaccinating a person, launching a campaign almost in the same mode as we did it for the pulse polio program? Why can't we have clusters of colonies with a vaccinator, the vaccine, a doctor, and a telecommunication system to give appointment, and try to fix target in that particular community to vaccinate, say 500, 600 every day. And in case they are not coming, then sending our person in that given 5 kilometers zone, a mobile or a pizza boy type of things, and they can go and call them. we have to horizontally increase the vaccination centers. I say that anybody and everybody who is ready to vaccinate and fulfill your baseline requirement to become a vaccinating center should be permitted, so that you are able to utilize it. It takes time to recognize a center. Somebody will have to inspect, see the right type of vaccine storage practice which is there, see the training of the vaccinator, use technology for training. It is 8 hours training. So supply side, I am say 75% comfortable. But actual vaccinating side, I am not very comfortable, because it becomes a state subject. And our states are not public health friendly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sriram. I think that's a very real assessment. Thank you.
Just one more.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. On this 2DG, I have started a campaign on Facebook for conservation of Nobel Prize to Anil Mishra. How would you react to that? Thank you very much.
Sir, if anybody in the country gets a Nobel Prize, it is a pride for me.
Hello. Yes, Professor Gupta now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
After that, Mr. Verma.
Dr. Srivastava,
Some time.
I'm an economist. I used to be professor of economics at the IIM Ahmedabad. Now, you mentioned that expenditure on public health should be about 4% of GDP, but which is a long way, because we are not spending about even half of that. But as we go along, our priorities will have to be much more clear, because we don't have too much money. And just the other day, I think yesterday, I saw an article in the Times of India by the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. He seems to be saying very clearly that the expenditure on Central Vista project should be allocated a priority over public health. Or maybe that the public health is not requiring money right now. We can still spend money on the Central Vista project. What is your assessment of that?
Sir, I am not a economist. I am a public health person. I think to use a building, you have to survive. If you don't survive, then whether it is a Vista project building or it is Taj Mahal, it is of no use. So if you ask me to fix priority, if I have got 100 pennies in my home and I have to invest it reasonably, and I have got a family of my wife and 2 children, then I will prefer to invest it for saving the life than for building a house.
Very good,
Very
Dr.
good.
Vishwas.
Excellent.
That's the right.
Excellent. Yes, Mr. Mahesh Verma.
Correct.
Mr. Mahesh Verma. Yes, Mahesh.
Sir,
Mahesh, you unmute your mic.
sir, your mic is muted.
महेश आपका माइक अनम्यूट कर लीजिए. Okay, while you do it, I'll request Reena to give her comment. Reena ji.
Sir, compliments, Dr. Srivastava. Was a great presentation, very comprehensive. There was somewhere I read about the vaccine having different efficacy on different racial population. Now, what is your view on this?
It is a fact that every vaccine will have different type of efficacy on different racial populations. and simultaneously the safety value also changes. And that is the reason there is a rule in the before introducing a new vaccine into the country that a limited trial has to be conducted on the population of India before we actually permit entry of such type of vaccine. And the result of the trial is always put before the INTEGI, which is the International Committee of Experts for introduction of the new vaccines in India. And once they validate it, only then we introduce it. And it takes into account both things, the racial variation as well as the safety. But when it is an emergency clearance like this, then the safety is the first concern. And sometimes the vaccines are permitted even before its efficacy has been fully tested. In the pandemic situation, the permission given by the DCGI is for emergency use. In emergency use, certain norms are permitted to be deviated. And in that norms, there is a weightage given to safety, which is higher, and a weightage given to efficacy, which is lower. So efficacy data is not on that number of individual recruits as the safety data. So the actual efficacy data emerge when the vaccine is put up for the public use. For example, Covishield, when it was put up for the public use after first vaccine dose, a study was conducted, a very premature study, a very small sample was done, about 100 cases, in which they find, I think about 20 days or 1 month period was there after vaccination, that 30 patients have not developed any type of antibodies. So it means we can interpret it that they have not developed, so they will not develop. We can interpret that they might be having some type of comorbid conditions or some other reasons, or they may be a vaccination technique failure. So there are thousands of reasons which may result in a vaccine not producing antibodies. We don't know what was the reason, but a scientific research study has to be done in these 30 patients who have not shown antibodies before we reach to a conclusion that look, this vaccine is only affecting in about 70% of the population where it produces antibodies. So what I mean to say that in public health emergencies, exigencies, pandemic situation like this, you need to take certain liberties. And one of them is that let us try to introduce a vaccine if it is safe. And during the course of vaccination, we will see the efficacy. The same thing happened with the JE. When the JE was there, I was there in the government. We introduced it with a concurrent surveillance mechanism to report the adverse event.
So, sir, when the WHO then clears a vaccine, should it be interpreted that in every racial population it will have implications, or it will be governed by those 70% aspect that you highlighted?
You know, WHO create a multi-country model for trial. If in that multi-country model your country is there, you have to see the data generated by them. And if your scientific community accept those data, then they introduce it as such. If they feel that no, this data is small in number, they have recruited 100 patients, we require 1,000 patients, then they say that complete this data.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastava. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mahesh Verma, can you? Yeah, now. Yes, Mahesh.
This is Mahesh Verma, former Health Secretary, Delhi and Manipur, and former CEO, Batra Hospital. I have known a few things about vaccines, but I still want to understand why the government and the health ministry decided to close the 3 PSUs, including Kasoli and Pune and one more. And why were they not cleaned up? Because the idea was that their products were substandard and so on. Why were they not cleaned up or restarted with a lot more of investment?
It is a matter of chance that I was in the government at the time when Kasoli was closed. Okay. Now, vaccine is a big business. And it is a heavy investment driven type of industry. Its only rule is that there is no rule to promote their business. And it will not stop using any type of international or national organization to infiltrate, grab, and use them for their business purposes. These are statements which I am making with full sense. WHO should notice this to us that you are not following good manufacturing practice. And these notes they are a simple letter, one-page letter, but the data which they require is voluminous. There may be at least about 1 kg of papers which has to be sent for every type of query they raise. You have not maintained the dossier, your safety check data is not available out there. We kept on sending data for about 3 years. Then their other team came. They said, we will de-recognize you. At that time, we are having at least about 40 or 50% of the generic export and a good amount of the vaccine export also. And we are supplying to Gavi also. We are supplying to the good number of the countries also. And as soon as the WHO says that WHO has de-recognized you and you are not allowed to manufacture and supply vaccines, so our international supply chain will be stopped. So I tried to do whatever possible at my end, requested them, and as a technical head, up to that level, the ball was in my court, and thereafter it entered into different court, and they have to, the administrative system, the bureaucratic system, the political system have to take up a considered decision that we will close down CRI Kasoli, we will close down other 2 lab PSU also, Hefkin and other also, and we will try to invest in the private sector to build up capacity. I will not be able to give you the reason for it. But the fact of the matter is that to me, this decision was not very appealing. Today, we are again going back to these 3 PSUs, begging with folded hand that you take this money and build up your capacity. We give you transfer of the technology of these vaccines. You create you manufacture it and supply it. Say during this period of time, which is approximately about 15 years, during this period of time, all these 3 PSU could have developed the BSL-4 or BSL-3 lab, which is essential for manufacturing of a vaccine. A BSL-3 lab cannot be created from the vacuum. It requires investment, it requires planning, it has to be put up over there. You know it better. So somehow I am not very comfortable with the reason, but I could not answer your questions fully. Whatever I was doing, I have tried to answer.
Now, was it some commercial interests who were pushing the WHO to de-recognize Indian?
How do I know? How do I know? Because I said that it is a huge industry. And during this period, there was a crisis going on in WHO. Their finances were not up to the mark. They were taking help from the various agencies, including the pharma industry, to create a consortium of complementing and supplementing their tour and travel. And I don't know what is there in the back of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Rajiv. Rajiv, would you? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Srivastav.
Thank you very much.
Explaining everything so well. I just have one question. See, we are considering all worst case scenarios in parallel. For example, once the 2DG comes, will the pressure on vaccines reduce to produce so many vaccines?
Pressure on vaccine will not reduce.
See, if 2DG is successful, as you said, after 30 days, and then it will be actually a wonderful change in the sense that hospitalizations will reduce, the need for excess oxygen will reduce, maybe the need for steroids will reduce, the number of deaths will reduce. Now, with all this, and this is just a month away, as you mentioned, will not the pressure to produce so many vaccines reduce simultaneously? Because, for example, the traditional flu, which we have, people have a treatment for it, like there are some drugs available, and everybody does not go in for vaccination of the traditional flu. It is recommended, but it's not done. So, do you think that things will change dramatically if 2DG is successful?
No, I don't think so. And the reason is that if we try to take care of infection rate, suppose it's stabilized around about 1 lakh per day. It is around about 2.5 or something like that per day. If it settled down to around about 1 lakh per day, then to find out a supply chain of 2G to the requirement will take approximately 4 or 5 months to be perfect, so that you don't have a demand supply gap. So during that period, that fear from the mind of the public will not disappear, that we want to be protected. For that, government cannot take up a decision that let us try to prepare a plan for 4 or 5 months and thereafter we will try to undo the increased demand which has been placed before the various type of manufacturing unit. Look at the 3 PSUs which has been interested in increasing the manufacturing of the vaccine. Now for these 3 PSUs, this is a government recognition to give them the old capacity and old self-esteem which they had once upon a time. They will try to do their best, they will try to create their capacity, but as soon as they will try to feel that look, government is going to cut down it again, they will not put their full force behind it. So I foresee that in year 2, you may have some slowness of requirement of vaccine supply, but in year 1, this year from the second wave onward up to December, we will not have any type of offloading on the manufacturing of the vaccine, supplying the vaccine, increasing the vaccination center. So it will remain as such. Have I responded to your query?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I'm in agreement with you now. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Vinay. Vinay, like to say something.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastav. You stated that the data generated so far has not been arranged in good databases which can be used for so many other applications. Why has it happened? Don't we have persons who are good at handling data?
Government has got a national digital health mission. Government has recognized ICMR as a nodal agency for health technology assessment, which is based on the data. Government has outsourced certain data analysis and dovetailing it into decision making for creating evidence to Kalam Institute of Technology in Visakhapatnam, which is under AMTZ. Beyond these three sources, I do not know if there is any source which is available which can make use of the data. The data which we are having are, I will say, unclean data, number one. They are data which are not shapeable. They are the data which cannot be converted into evidence. And there is a lack of professionals available over there. I am working with an NGO. I have got a digital team with me. We have created a small nucleus with the Health Ministry and the National Digital Health Missions. That is National Innovation Unit. We are trying to do something. But these are the small things. The data which is being generated here in India during the last 16, 17, 18 months, this is a tremendous data. It can create a very large database. It has got all the possibility of analysis, modeling, application of artificial intelligence, simulations, and it can bring about tremendous change. But the government need to invest money, create a institutional arrangement for such type of data management, and create a linkages to use it at the time of the need, which is not there.
So was it recommended to the government that they should do it as fast as they can? Some arrangement.
Government, it has been recommended umpteen number of times. From the time I was there, it has been recommended. It is there in the national health policy as well as, and there is a parliament. There is a commitment which was given to the. In the, I think, 12th plan, the commitment was given, and the work was entrusted to the ICMR, which created the HTA India type of things, which is largely based on evidence generation collected from the data. But the thing is that you require institutional arrangement for generating data, cleaning data, shaping data at the state level, and these data should be subsumed into a repository at the central level, and this system has to evolve. It requires investment. We are not using IIIT. We are not using IIT. We are not including large number of the artificial intelligence organizations which are being established by NGO. Like there is a big organization which is working in Mumbai. It is working on the AI-based solutions. So we are not able to network and create a consolidated response system by using data in the right way.
There have been many decisions which in hindsight are being questioned in this pandemic. Is the decision making process all right, or there is arbitrariness in decision making, or they get proper advice, or they are unable to get proper advice?
Sir, at present, I am not in the government system, so I do not know about it. But at the end of the day, when I was there in the government system, all the technical decisions were taken by the attached office of directorate, and we have got an institute which is known as National Institute of Communicable Disease. Now it is known as National Center for Disease Control. It is almost at par with the CDC of Atlanta of USA, which is doing the same job. How much they are utilizing the system over there, the strength over there, I don't know what is the present system. But I hope that they must be utilizing them fully and while taking decisions in the pandemic like this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, any other observations, questions?
One question, Dr. Srivastava. You just mentioned
Yes,
about the
Doctor.
data. The data needs to be cleaned, and that this require plus other things, and saying that all these things require a lot of investment. So why is that not being done? What is your guess?
That the question is addressed to a wrong person who is not in the government at present.
No, what is your guess? You have left the government, but still are in the sector.
It is
Why don't
usually
you
not a
answer the
guess,
question
but
yourself?
these type of responses should be based on facts. But still, you are asking me the guess. The technical wing in the directorate in the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare probably has not remained as robust as it was there in the past. The new technology and the immersion of new technologies, creating evidence for it, utilizing data for it, which is operating in ICMR as HTAIN, probably during last 4 or 5 years, has not developed that robust state-level network for capturing the data in real time and using it for a shortest possible time response in a situation like COVID. That may be the reason, and usually there is a relatively poor response of some states in participating in such type of national venture of collecting the data, because they may have different notion about giving the data. These are the things which may be responsible.
Thank you.
But it is a guesswork, 100% guesswork. And
Thank you, Dr.
it has got other
Srivastava.
reasons to be absolutely useless.
Okay. Yes, Avdesh, Dr. Avdesh Gupta. Yes, sir. Unmute कर लीजिए. Please unmute your mic.
मैंने कोविशील्ड का सेकंड डोज 6 हफ्ते बाद लिया था. अब बताया जा रहा है कि 12 हफ्ते से 16 हफ्ते के बीच में लें तो ज्यादा असर पड़ेगा. मेरी समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि मेरा वो डोज सेकंड डोज बेकार गया या क्या दोबारा डोज लेना चाहिए हमें या क्या करना चाहिए.
देखिए, वो ऐसा है कि द वैक्सीनेशन प्रोसेस के अंदर जब भी कोई न्यू वायरस आता है या उसका वैक्सीनेशन के बारे में बात होती है तो ये डायनामिक होता है. फर्स्ट डोज और सेकंड डोज के बीच में जो वेरिएशन था, शुरू में 4 महीने का था, फिर 6 महीने, 4 से 6 महीने का हुआ, फिर अब 3 महीने का हो गया. तो इससे ये कहीं नहीं इम्प्लाई होता कि जिन लोगों ने पहले लगवा लिया, जैसे मैंने पहले लगवाया, मैंने भी अपनी 2 डोज ली हैं. दोनों डोज मेरी, एक कोविशील्ड की डोज है, पहली लगवाई, फिर उसके 6 हफ्ते बाद दूसरी लगवा ली. उससे मैं 6 हफ्ते का था. तो अब मुझे कोई दूसरी डोज लगवाने की जरूरत नहीं है. ऐसे ही आपको भी कोई दूसरी डोज लगवाने की जरूरत नहीं है. लेकिन अब आने वाले टाइम में जो लोग लगवाएंगे और जिनकी सेकंड डोज वेटिंग में है, उन लोगों के लिए ये 6 हफ्ते की बजाय 3 महीने का टाइम जो दिया गया है, वो डायनेमिक चेंज इन द अवेलेबल एविडेंस के एनालिसिस के बेसिस पे दिया गया.
डॉक्टर साहब, शॉर्टेज की वजह से दिया गया.
अवधेश, अपना अनम्यूट कर लीजिए. यू आर स्पीकिंग बट वी कांट हियर यू.
डॉक्टर साहब, ये टाइम जो बढ़ाया है.
ओके सॉरी. नहीं, आपकी एडवाइस बिल्कुल सही है, मानते हैं, लेकिन बहुत से लोगों को ये भ्रम है कि इसका मतलब है कि वो पहले वाली डोज उतना असर नहीं कर रही है, उतनी एंटीबॉडीज नहीं बनी होंगी। तो क्या कोई दूसरा ऑल्टरनेटिव बनना चाहिए उनके लिए या नहीं? ये दुविधा में है।
ये तो फैक्ट है कि एविडेंस जब जनरेट होते हैं तो वो रिफ्रेश होते रहते हैं जैसे जैसे समय गुजरता जाता है। तो नेचुरली जो पुराने एविडेंस होंगे जिसके अंदर ये बताया गया होगा कि 4 हफ्ते के बाद या 6 हफ्ते के बाद इतना एंटीबॉडी टाइटर रहता है, उस एविडेंस को कंपेयर किया हो गया होगा 3 महीने बाद वाले एविडेंस है, उसमें कहीं ना कहीं सुपीरियरिटी पाई गई होगी। तो ये आपकी जो आपके दिमाग में जो सवाल है, ये सवाल अपनी जगह वाजिब भी है, और इस सवाल का जवाब ये बनता है कि आप प्रोटेक्टेड तो है, लेकिन टू बी मोर प्रोटेक्टेड फॉर अ लॉन्गर ड्यूरेशन, आई एम यूजिंग दो मोर प्रोटेक्टेड फॉर लॉन्गर ड्यूरेशन, दैट डोज पीरियड हैज बीन इंक्रीज, सेकंड डोज पीरियड हैज बीन इंक्रीज। सेकंड बूस्ट लगने के बाद अगर आपकी 6 महीने एंटीबॉडीज रहती है तो आपका 3 महीने ये कवर हो गया, 6 महीने ये कवर हो गया, आपको बूस्टर की जरूरत शायद देर में है। आपका दूसरा मतलब ये भी हो सकता है कि शायद आपका 5% 10% एंटीबॉडी टाइटर कम हो, लेकिन वो आपके जो प्रोटेक्शन लेवल है जो कि रिक्वायर्ड है बीमारी के खिलाफ, वो प्रोटेक्शन लेवल से बेस लाइन से नीचे नहीं जाएगा। इसके आधार पे निर्णय लिए जाते हैं। और जहां तक आपका सवाल है कि वो उसके लिए ना सप्लाई कम हो रही है, ऐसा संभव नहीं है। तो इतने सारे डाटा पे बेस होती है और इतने सारे रिजल्ट पे बेस होती है, इतनी कमेटी से निकलती है कि उसको मैनेज करना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है।
देखिए, जब हमने 6 हफ्ते में लगाई थी, तब भी ये बताया गया था कि एस्ट्राजेनेका ने जर्मनी में या और कंट्रीज में 12 हफ्ते का टाइम दिया है, लेकिन इंडिया ने फिर भी 6 हफ्ते या 4 हफ्ते दिया था। लॉजिक बिल्कुल नहीं पता, लेकिन जो हमें बताया गया हमने ले ली डोज। अब तो हम दोबारा ले भी नहीं सकते हैं। खैर छोड़िए, एक अगला सवाल आता है, वो आपकी बात से निकला, वो ये है कि ये डोज जो लगी, 2 डोज लग गई, ये कितने पीरियड तक इफेक्टिव है? साल भर, 2 साल, 4 साल?
अभी ये कहा नहीं जा सकता।
तो यहाँ पर सवाल उठता है कि जब वैक्सीनेशन हमारे यहाँ साल भर में हो पाएगा, पूरा जनवरी से शुरू हुआ, कंप्लीट होते होते एंड ऑफ द ईयर हो जाएगा, तो जब तक उनका पूरा होगा तब तक ये जो पहले वाले हैं उनको वो लाइन में आ जाएंगे, फिर उनका शुरू हो जाएगा, क्योंकि पता नहीं उनका कितने दिन तक चलेगा। तो ये भी बात कोई बोलता नहीं है इसमें।
एक सर्विलेंस चल रहा है जिसके अंदर वैक्सीनेटेड लोगों का लीनियर प्रोग्रेशन देखा जा रहा है कि उनके अंदर एंटीबॉडी टाइटर कितना बना रह रहा है, कब डिक्लाइन करना शुरू हो रहा है। इन ऑल प्रोबेबिलिटी दिसंबर के अंत तक उसके रिजल्ट आने शुरू हो जाएंगे, तब हमें ये पता चलेगा कि जो प्रोटेक्शन मिल रहा है, जो एंटीबॉडी टाइटर है, वो कितने टाइम में डिक्लाइन करना शुरू करता है, कब क्रिटिकल लेवल से नीचे जाता है, कब बूस्टर डोज की जरूरत पड़ेगी। ऐसा हर नए वायरस का जिसकी वैक्सीन डेवलप की जाती है और उसको उसका सिस्टम डेवलप करना पड़ता है, उसके साथ होता है। ये स्वाभाविक है और इसके बिना किसी भी नए वायरस के लिए कोई वैक्सीन का एक वैक्सीनेशन शेड्यूल बनाना असंभव है।
जी, थैंक यू डॉक्टर। कुछ और सवाल हैं?
तो मेरा ख्याल है इस पे कुछ होगा काम। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू अवधेश, थैंक यू। शशि भूषण, यस मिस्टर रॉय।
सर एक सवाल मेरा भी बता दीजिए
डॉक्टर साहब। एक मिनट सुरेश में प्लीज लेट शशि स्पीक। यस शशि।
Dr. Saab, I have been reading that our failure in anticipating severity of the second wave was mainly caused by our not doing enough genome sequencing. Perhaps the WHO guidelines are 5% of all RT-PCR positive cases to be sequenced. In our case, perhaps we have not been doing even 1/5 of that. I don't know whether it is correct, but I have read it in the official, I mean, the normal press by very eminent people. So do you think that could be a reason for our failure to anticipate the second wave?
ठीक है, मुझे इसके पता नहीं, इसके बारे में आपने जो पढ़ा है मैंने नहीं पढ़ा है। हाँ, ये मुझे पता है कि WHO के प्रिस्क्राइब्ड 5% से कम पे था, कितने परसेंट था ये मुझे नहीं पता। लेकिन जीनोम की स्टडी जो होगी वो RT-PCR के 5% जो पॉजिटिव केसेस है उनके अंदर करी जाएगी
जी।
उस जीनोम की स्टडी करने के लिए जो हमारे यहाँ जीनोम के सेंटर्स हैं उनका नंबर और उसके अंदर जो उसको टेस्ट करने के लिए ह्यूमन रिसोर्स और जो मटेरियल की आवश्यकता होती है, जो लैब इक्विपमेंट की आवश्यकता होती है, वो सब कितने मुहैया है और कितने नहीं मुहैया है, आई एम नॉट अवेयर अबाउट इट. बट इफ दे हैव नॉट डन that 5% on account of having everything in place, but simply by ignorance, by not understanding the seriousness and gravity of it, it is a matter of concern. And if they have not done because they don't have infrastructural capacity available to them, it is definitely a issue which should be handled, taken up by the ICMR and the health ministry so that they build up that capacity.
जी.
Thank you. जी. Brigadier Rajendra. Rajendra. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Srivastava, for your excellent presentation. And I'm sure we have become much wiser than we were earlier. My question is, Doctor, while we are still fighting with the second wave of pandemic, now we have come to know that the black fungus is now becoming a pandemic now. It is cases are growing day by day. Some states have even declared it as a pandemic. So in this state, what do you suggest that we should be doing? Is the existing vaccine will be sufficient for this, or do we need a separate vaccine? Because at present we don't have enough medicines also for this black fungus. So what is your view on this?
Yeah, this black fungus is a fungus which is known to the medical fraternity for a long time. It is nothing new. It is not like corona, new virus or new fungus coming into it. That is number one. Number two is it is an opportunistic fungus. It tried to find out a weak person, and when they find the weak person, it means the persons who are suffering from comorbid condition, particularly diabetes, who are under treatment for cancer on the immunosuppressive drug and things like that. And the person is not behaving well as far as the health, as a personal hygiene and home hygiene is concerned. These fungus find an entry into the human body. And once it finds an entry into the human body, if by chance the disease, that is like COVID, is inflicting those areas which is their point of multiplication, which is their most liked area of multiplications like nose, sinuses, they are very comfortable in going there and multiplying over there. So they are the opportunist fungus. They enter into our body on account of bad health behavior of the end user plus a comorbid conditions which is not controlled properly like diabetes and other things. Now second thing is this fungus need to be detected early. So there are early detection symptoms, which means that we must know them like we know the symptom of the COVID. Dryness of nose, naak mein papdi jam jati hai, bleeding from the nose. When you are sneezing in the morning, you bleed it. The clot which is there is usually little bit darkish red, a mixture of some dark color plus red. Then you have got swelling underneath your eye. Then you have got swelling over your upper lid. Then you have got headache which is retroorbital. You feel that you are having a severe headache behind it. And you have got redness of your inner angle of the eye. Now, if you find all these symptoms, please consult your doctor and get it treated. The third thing is the treatment. Yes, the clear-cut Rambaण treatment is not available, but amphotericin B is being used for treating these type of conditions. If treated in time, It will not take away your eye, but if you delay it, then it causes harm to your eye to the extent that it ultimately end up in removal of the eye for saving the life. Now, saying that this particular fungus is a pandemic, it is not like this. But it requires definitely measures, because ultimately delayed reporting, because everybody is worried about the COVID. Nobody take care. They attribute everything. If there is a redness in eye, they will feel that okay, मुझे थोड़ा जुकाम हो रहा था, छींक हो रही थी, मेरी आंख लाल हो गई है. But by the time they reach to a doctor and they find out that it is a black fungus, it results in removal of the eye. And when the eyes are removed, it becomes a good media story. And when it becomes a media story, then there is a pressure. So some government has acted fast, sometimes not in a very wise manner, but that ultimately built up the capacity to respond to the thing. But it is not a pandemic.
Okay. But is it related to the COVID pandemic?
If tomorrow there is another pandemic which is affecting your nose, the virus is entering through there, you are also same vulnerability.
Ji, thank you. Yes, Suresh. Suresh wanted to ask another question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. You know, the Dr. K.K. Agrawal, he was a good friend and he died despite having 2 jabs and with the ventilator support. Also, several people who are doctors, they tell me that in the medical profession, the number of deaths, even after 2 jabs, has been higher than otherwise. Do you think that that's a right assessment? And if so, do you think, what is your comment on the effectiveness of the vaccine as such to the vulnerable groups?
Actually, the data has to be analyzed to say so that those who have taken 2 doses of vaccines, they are more dying on account of COVID. That data is yet not available. The second thing is that KK, as he was known to you, he was known to me also.
Of course.
KK died because his involvement was quite severe. And in spite of best treatment which could have been provided, he was not able to sustain it. KK was probably 62, 63 years of age, maybe 65, I don't remember it actually. But he succumbed to it. We cannot say that he has not taken right precaution. We cannot say that he has not attended to the doctor at right time. We cannot say that he has not tested himself at right time. He has not got the right hospitalized care. He must have got everything, but still he died. Now here comes the question that the type of virus which has infected him, what type of virus was that? Was it a double mutant virus? Was it a type of mutated virus? Was it the ordinary virus which was creating it? That is the issue of further analysis and research. Like I had 2 doses of vaccines. After 6 weeks, I had a COVID. I had very low symptoms, fever for 5 days, then it subsided. I don't have by chance any comorbid condition. That was not an issue. My wife was also having it. She had 2 or 3 comorbid conditions. Her fever was not getting controlled. She had a low, although the infection load was, she has only 1 dose of vaccination. She was hospitalized. She was given dexamethasone. Her fever settled down 3 days after she came back. Now, these things need to be further researched so that you know why I responded, why my wife was responded, why KK was not able to respond, although we have received the same vaccine. Now, the myth about the vaccine is you should not think that if you take the vaccines, you will not have the COVID. It is just like your seat belt. If you tie seat belt when you are driving, you may get accident, but you may not die of it. To do the research in that direction, to know that it is providing that type of seat belt protection to the human life, that is where the KK-like case or my case or similarly other case data has to be analyzed and ultimately put up before the public and the scientific fraternity and make a recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any other? Yes, Dilip. Dilip ji. Dilip ji, yes.
Sir, I was watching a video of one Dr. Digambar Nayak of Goa, who is quite a known doctor there in Goa, and he went through a very severe level of COVID to the extent that on the 9th day he had to start writing his will. And then in his own video, he mentions that some of his other doctor friends suggested that he should be given intravenous vitamin C in very heavy dosages, which he could convince the doctors there in his hospital, and he did that and he came out. What is your opinion about vitamin C being used for such purposes?
Vitamin C is standard prescriptions for the COVID cases. Whether it is to
very large doses.
Whether it is to be used and orally or intravenously is a subject matter of further data generation and recommendation in what type of cases it is needed intravenously, in what type of cases it is given orally. But it is a standard prescription. You give 2 vitamins, 1 zinc and 2 medicines. It is a standard treatment for all the COVID cases.
I believe he was taken 100 grams of vitamin C in a day. Intravenous.
It is a matter of further research to find out repurposed use of the vitamin C in cases of COVID of different severity, different viral load, different type of level of D-dimer. So that has to be seen and then final recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
One small question. I just wanted to ask you about
May I ask the question?
Has any relationships been established between the level of vitamin D for Delhi, and the severity of the coronavirus?
There are studies. There are studies which shows that there is a direct relationship between the deficiency of vitamin D and severity of the corona infections. But there is no study in which it quotes that if you are having this much amount of vitamin D in your body, which is over and above your normal level, then you will be protected this much percentage. If you have more amount, then you will be protected more. This study is not available, but deficiency studies are there.
And established, so that means if the vitamin D level is say above 40, then the severity will be less.
I think that 25 is the cutoff of vitamin D level. So 40 is a normal level.
Hello.
Yes.
I have a small question. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my question is, suppose India succeeds in vaccinating those 70, 80 crore doses, but Nepal and Bangladesh and Pakistan and other neighboring countries do not still reach comparable levels. So will India remain really protected because this virus is considered to be airborne?
This virus is not airborne as yet. This virus is being transmitted through droplets, which were previously much more heavier. Now they have become much more lighter. They last for a longer period in around the environment, which is not for days or months. It is for some hours. So the first response to this is your question is this. The second is that neighboring country do not control it, and they keep on sending their human being as a regular transport mechanism, as a regular visiting to the country, and they bring in the reinfection So it is same as we talk about the polio. We do some type of surveillance at the borders, whether it is land borders, sea border, air border, and all these surveillance mechanism has to be kept intact depending upon the situation evolving within the country and in the countries around it.
Ji, thank you. Anil. Anil, unmute. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm very happy that the fellow members have enjoyed Dr. R.K. Srivastav's talk today. I indeed feel very privileged of having been a friend of Dr. R.K. Srivastav for the past 30 years when he was heading one of the departments in Safdarjung Hospital, orthopedics and rehabilitation. I don't know how we met. Then he moved as DG Health Services, but he's been a great friend. Whenever I've called upon him to, seek his advice on any friend or family member, he has responded. Greatly privileged. I have just 3 comments to make as a non-expert. There's so much expertise in this group that one starts groping in the dark. Number 1, see, politics has taken a very, very heavy toll of our fight against COVID. That's my first observation. Politics. Number 2 is vested interests, business interests, as you pointed out. The delay in sanctioning, giving sanction to Sputnik to come into India and start selling. And finally, number 3, the exporting of vaccines to 40, 50 countries. I found a UN permanent representative proudly declaring that we have sent vaccines to 60, 70 countries in the world when the people in our own country were dying left, right, and center. Thank you very much, sir. No more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Excellent comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Anil. I must say that this has been a wonderful session. And we are grateful to Anil Chaudhary for connecting us with Dr. R.K. Srivastav. Dr. Srivastav, it was a great presentation. We are grateful for your addressing us. And I personally have learned so much about COVID from what you said and the way you took the questions. We are really grateful to you, sir. I have just one pointer, and that's a very small request to you, which you may take just now or which you can address later. That, I agree with you that there's a state of fear in our mind, which is perhaps turning into a panic. None of us present here will come out of the COVID without losing something. There's a general atmosphere of depression all around. Everything seems to be very gloomy. Now, this is a very pessimistic scenario. I would request you to kindly help us build a possible optimistic scenario. And what could be the factors, the features, the elements of this possible optimistic scenario? Like what you said. Number 1, that vaccination should be as fast as possible, and we should be able to cover a very large percentage in a short time. That is one. The second is that drugs like 2DG or the other drugs being developed by other pharmaceutical companies like Cadila, for example, they prove effective. And that is why our dependence on vaccine reduces to some extent. Then number 3, that the number of vaccination centers in the country, as you well rightly mentioned, that they should be increased. I don't know what is the total number of CGHS centers, CGHS clinics in the country, the number of primary health centers of various state governments in the country, and whether all of them could be, could be made as vaccination centers in a very short time. Now, all these features, if we sort of, put them in an optimistic scenario, perhaps, we'll feel a little better. So I'll request you to kindly think about this possible optimistic scenario. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for addressing us, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. It is my privilege. It is very encouraging to hear the queries, the various type of questions you have put up. You are all stalwart in your own field. You have seen the government functioning from in your careers, and you have been advising the government for many actions. If there are some sensible suggestions, please advise to the government to act on that. It will be really something good for me as a person, for public, as end user of the COVID care. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Grateful, much grateful.